building the marketing system, it allows us to talk directly to the sellers and have the opportunities to purchase real estate without having all the people in the middle who want to be paid, right? So, we pay for the opportunity by paying for marketing, which for us is primarily direct mail.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Mike DeHaan. Mike, we're at GoBundance, and it was just an honor to meet Mike and hear about his success. Over the last year or two. This should also be another show that just helps you to jump out of your seat a little bit and motivates you. Because I enjoyed meeting Mark and hearing, what he's done. But in March of 2020, remember this wasn't that long ago, COVID happened, right? And Mike lost his development job and was forced to start a real estate business full time. But since then, he's done 52 deals, including a variety of wholesales, flips, and buying rentals. In 2021, he and his partners did $950,000 in revenue and have accumulated a portfolio of 34 residential units. This year, they've started the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing podcast to start teaching people really how to start building their own collection of real estate assets and nuances of running a full-time investing business. And we're going to talk about how, college wasn't for him, but also how he quit with no plan. And he was married at the time. And we jump into that a little bit, right? Usually if you're married and maybe you're in college, you're in school, or maybe you have another job, you have a job and you just quit that job with no plan. Sometimes that's going to cause a little friction, right? On the home front, one way or the other. However, we go into that today because I think that is, it's just crucial to think through those things and how he did this. And maybe you're contemplating the same thing. Maybe that job is not for you, but maybe it's time to quit. Maybe it's not. Everybody's situation is very different, but you're going to hear how he did it at least. And then you're going to hear about building marketing systems. And this is something he has become very good at, is building marketing systems and finding off-market deals. And there's going to be a couple specific tools that he uses that I've not heard of before. Even 12 or 1,300 interviews now, I've not heard of some of these tools that they're using and having a lot of success with. So I know you're going to learn a lot from the show today and from this discussion with Mike. We are back at GoBundance. Again, I love doing interviews in person. I don't get to do this too often. Even 1,200 interviews, there's very few I've got to do in person. So I love the energy of just a room full of amazing entrepreneurs. And again, with me today is another amazing entrepreneur. It's just incredible, the room at GoBundance and all these guys who are, pushing things to the limits, the hardest they can go. But the cool part too is that they care about the individual person. They care about your family. They're trying to take those things into account. So I love that about GoBundance. And we have an amazing guest with us today. Mike, welcome to the show. I want to know a little more about you, and you can share that better than I can, of course, but I want to hear about your business. Maybe you can tell us too, what were you doing before real estate? Why did you get into real estate? What caused you to want to add this hustle, to your life? Or maybe you were born that way. I don't know, but you can share a little bit about that. Then I want to get into some of your superpowers that I know can help our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on, Whitney. I appreciate it. I have a real estate, like a direct seller, off-market real estate wholesaling business. I guess to say wholesaling, because that's a big part of our revenue, but we also flip properties. We also buy a lot of rentals, and that varies from residential through commercial properties. I've been running that business for about 2 years. Before that, I kind of went the traditional route. Went to high school. I went to college at Gonzaga University in Spokane, Washington. I got an electrical engineering degree. Parents very proud, right into kind of a gold job for a lot of people. Got a job immediately after college. Did that for 5 years, worked at a handful of different companies. After seeing what that job looked like and what the opportunities were going down the line, I decided it wasn't for me. So in early 2018, I quit, no real plan, and basically just said, I don't know, I need to figure out my life. It was a big decision because I was, I think I was 27 at the time, and I was making six figures. Wife was making good money. We were living in a low-cost living area. We were, by all intents and purposes, we'd made it, right? Walked from that and decided to figure it out. Milled around with some things for a couple of years. At one point, I was going back to school to be a physical therapist because I've always been big into sports and coaching people in weightlifting. Olympic weightlifting was what I coached people in. Worked in that for a little bit, decided I didn't like that. Worked as a web developer. I taught myself how to code, worked for some startups. Didn't really, like that whole opportunity super well. So then I kind of fell into real estate as I sort of started to learn about business and growing wealth and the opportunity that could come from that I could start to build sort of as a one-man operator. That was what appealed to me at the start, because all the other businesses I realized I needed to have a team. I needed to be around people that have a lot of experience, a lot of capital. And starting in real estate, I realized I had some capital basis from my corporate 401k. I liquidated that and I was like, I'm just going to buy some rental properties. Bought those straight off the market. In hindsight, they were terrible first investments because I didn't know what I was doing. So they were like turnkey properties. I was like, my payment on each of these will be $1,200 a month. I can rent them out for $1,600. I'm just making $400 a property, right? That's obviously not how it works. Either way though, like I was still making a little bit. I got the mailbox money coming in that kind of gave me the bug. So I started down that route. And then I started going to meetups, listening to podcasts, getting more into real estate investing in general. Later that year, late 2018, I partnered with somebody and bought a duplex, did my first Burr method property, where you buy, rehab, rent it out, refinance it, and redo that, paid them off. 2019, I started flipping properties, mostly partnering with other people who had money, and I would bring the hustle, flipped 4 properties that year, bought another rental property, which was a triplex. And then as I was sort of going down that path, I realized I was making gains financially and in my business, but not at the sort of trajectory that I wanted. So I decided, how can I go bigger? How can I do this thing with scale? So I decided I need to start marketing for my own deals. And that sort of is what led me to what I'm doing now, where we are direct to seller investment business.
Okay. Now there was a few questions there. I want to get to your superpower, which is the marketing systems, right? Because we all wonder how to do that the best, right? Most of us are horrible at it. However, you've mastered that. And so I want to get to that, but I want to also hone in a little bit on, like you obviously went to college, you had this JOB, you called it a gold something.
The golden handcuffs, yeah.
Yeah, golden handcuffs, that's right. But you decided it wasn't for you and you just quit. No plan, you said. Yep. Okay, but you also mentioned there, wife, right? You were married. Speak to that a little bit. Or like you quit, no plan. I mean, what was the family saying, the wife saying? How did you all communicate about this decision to quit? It's a big life change, right? All the college and this great JOB, and now all of a sudden, it's not for me.
Yeah. So I'm extremely fortunate that my wife is a low-key individual. She's very low stress, and which is good because I'm very type A. She's very type B. And, she's even said to me, she's like, hey, if, we got to live in a cardboard box, as long as I got my dog, I'll be happy. So that conversation was very easy. In terms of a home life standpoint, because our income was dropped by 70%, the second I left that job. So, we basically stopped eating out. We stopped spending money on luxury things. Our fun was doing free activities, going hiking, stuff like that, which was fine. We live in a beautiful place. We have a lot of those opportunities. But the harder conversation with my parents. I remember when I called my parents and with the intention of telling them that I was leaving my career, especially because, they helped me for my school. They're very proud of me being an engineer. My mom comes from an academic background. So she had value in herself as a mom saying like, yeah, I raised this son to go on to be an engineer. And especially when I told them that I didn't really know what I was going to do and I was just leaving. No parents are going to be like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. My dad actually was a lot more understanding, I guess, because he had a similar sort of story in his life. But my mom, coming from an academic background, was just, what are you thinking? For a while, there was this, definitely wasn't like an animosity, but they were trying to be supportive because they love me and I appreciate that. But, there was a lot of questions that were coming up as I was making that decision.
What was the timeline from, say, leaving that JOB? And you tried lots of things in between there, right? To finding the real estate path and, hitting that head on.
So real estate was pretty mixed into a lot of the startup stuff that I was doing. So I did the physical therapy thing for about 6 weeks. I worked at a clinic and I was like, I can't do this. So I quit that. And as I was learning to code, I was basically moonlighting as a coach at a local gym. So I would do that, making like $25 a class, making almost nothing at the end of the day for like the time spent, and teaching myself to code. I did that for about 3 months. It was after I got my job at my first startup that, they were paying me almost nothing. I think I was making like $1,000 a month because it was early stage, right? And I was like, man, I need some money from somewhere. So that's how I started to look into passive income and things like that. And I decided to pull the trigger and liquidate my retirement accounts and pay all those penalties to buy those first properties. So even when I did that, I still worked for the startups and I was still doing the development stuff. Even though the first startup I worked for went belly up, I started doing some freelance work. I did that all through up until COVID started in early 2020. And even after I started my business that I run now, I was still working as a freelance developer for a few months. And then when COVID happened, my main client was a family entertainment business, and that obviously did very poorly when everything got shut down. So they let me go. And at that point, I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going full on into real estate now. And that was sort of what forced me to fully commit.
No, that's incredible, because I hear many stories. It's like, well, I got laid off. That was the pushing point, right? I was pushed off the ledge to go full time into real estate or whatever it may be, that now I'm finding success in. So grateful for the story, because I just think there's many that can relate to that. You bought some rentals, you made a bunch of mistakes. However, you've been honing the skill of marketing systems and building those systems. And tell us a little bit, though, about why is that important? Let's kind of start at the beginning a little bit. Building a marketing system, what does that mean, when you say that, and why is that important?
Exactly. So building the marketing system, it allows us to talk directly to the sellers and have the opportunities to purchase real estate without having all the people in the middle who want to be paid, right? So, we pay for the opportunity by paying for marketing, which for us is primarily direct mail. So one of the advantages that we have in this market that's so competitive is we have the opportunities that everybody else seeks. So we always have so many exits for the different leads that come into our system. So I know a lot of people that are, just have large syndications or things like that. I meet so many people at GoBundance that have these very impressive portfolio syndications, but they still get all the deals from brokers. And that's awesome, right? That's obviously working. By not having brokers and by going direct to the sellers, we're having similar opportunities, but for properties that are 60 cents in the dollar, 70 cents in the dollar, especially the way that our marketing works, where we pull data from public records that would show some sort of distress and we market to them. And, by the time that they call us on our mail, it's not like a cold call, right? Where you're trying to entice them to have a conversation with you. If they call you from something that ended up in their mailbox, they're raising their hand saying, I want to have a conversation, right? And so that's a very, very different style of lead than, what a lot of people do with the cold calling, the SMS marketing, stuff like that.
Great. I appreciate that. Just highlighting that a little bit, because we all want to be able to do that, right? Yes, we've done many large projects. Almost all of them have come from brokers. Just those relationships for us have been crucial. However, we wouldn't pass up a deal that came directly from the seller, of course, right? And actually, we do have a couple now but it's from those relationships, right? We've done deals with them, and then they're like, hey, would you all like to see this one as well? And things like that happen. However, I can't say that we're doing really direct to seller marketing, like this. So let's talk a little bit about the data that you're pulling and what data is important. What, if the seller's getting started and he's saying, maybe I can find somebody like this in my market, even if it's 80 cents on the dollar, or, it may still be a great deal, right? What's some of the data that they should be looking at to hone down that search to find those people?
So a lot of our stuff, both residential, and I'll say too, this works very obviously for residential property, but it also works for industrial and commercial property as well. So we've added an 8-unit apartment complex to our portfolio. As it sits, the property's worth, I think, $800,000. We bought it for $475,000. Once we get it up to market rents, it should be worth $1.2.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So, and that came from a mail piece, right? We've also bought development opportunities from land and acreage and things like that, all from mail. Those lists that we look for is basically anything that's publicly recorded that might indicate that there's some sort of stressor in that individual's life or that business's life that, if it's owned by an LLC, that would potentially indicate that they might need to sell the property. We look at people that have filed bankruptcies, they're going to court for divorce, they've owned it for extremely long periods of time, 40, 50 years. That's a distressor for somebody. If somebody's getting into their 70s and 80s, right, they're going to have this property that might have issues that they want to sell. People going to jail, people that have had different kinds of transfers, especially if you see interfamily transfers, we see a lot of stuff like that. So if they have recorded quitclaim deeds, I don't know if they call it quitclaim deeds all across the country, that's what they call it in Washington, but especially if there's several of them in a row, that probably means that it's an inheritance that's being passed between children and they don't quite know who wants the property. All those sort of things that we don't necessarily have a guarantee that they're distressed to sell a property, but it's all a numbers game, right? It's all just about reaching out and, if you get 1 to 2% of the people that come back and say, raise their hand, they call you on that piece of mail and they say, yes, I want to have a conversation, you can bet you're going to get some pretty sweet opportunities in there.
What system is, how do we find that information? Is there, I know most counties have a local website where you can find some of that stuff, but is there a different way that you all find the information? How do you all find that? Or you just scrape it somehow, or what does that look like?
So yeah, there's a few different ways. So public list providers like ListSource, or we use a program called PropStream, which is, a subscription-based website that you can go and you can build lists of any sort of criteria that you want. It doesn't doesn't work in every state. If you're in a non-disclosure state, then you're not going to have quite as much data. Fortunately, where we are at in Washington State, it's very easy to access a lot of this data. If you don't have that, what you have to do is go directly through usually the county that you're operating in will have that data available somehow, whether you need to reach out to them to access it, or ours, it has it available publicly posted, but there's no way to download it because they want to make it difficult to be able to market to people, right? So we actually have a team of virtual assistants that goes through and manually scrapes it. They go through like the court records. They see so-and-so's going to court for divorce. They skip trace that individual. They see if they own any property. Oh, yes, they do. What's their mailing address? Cool. Add them to the mail list. And we do that basically constantly, churning through the court records on a regular basis.
Those county websites are not all created equal. That's for sure.
I know, it's very
Some
true.
of them are very difficult to navigate. And I do sometimes think they do it on purpose. But anyway, I appreciate you just elaborating a little bit there, because I think it's, we all want that, right? But it's spending the time to go after those and then take the time to send all those pieces and whatnot. And I thought what you said there too, you're using virtual assistants, right? You're training this team to go scrape, search, these lists. You're training them, and hey, then they're spitting these lists out to you, right? So, you do that. What size of list should somebody start with when they're thinking about doing something like this? Or is there a way to quantify that? Somebody may not be at your level of doing this yet, but, if they're thinking, well, what should I start with? Should it be 1,000 people that I mail to, or 100 people? Or I know it's going to be probably deal specific, market specific, all those things. But just give them some kind of ballpark of something to shoot towards.
Yeah. So I think it depends on obviously the kind of property that you're going for. Because if you're going for larger assets, for example, it's going to be more of a limited group. But if you're just going for, let's say, residential distressed properties, I typically tell people, and people that I work with, we do a little bit of coaching, tell me you need to start with about $5,000 per month, which can seem like a lot. But when you're getting a response rate of 1 to 1.5%, that's 50 to 75 chances at bat, right? And then people that call in, there will be some that are, wanting retail price. There will be some that don't sell for some reason or another, like they don't actually have full rights to the property. People that are just going to, waste your time, things like that. So 5,000 is kind of the magic number that we found to be able to start getting traction. But more important than the actual size of the list, honestly, is, if you're going to spend that money, making sure that you're committed to the follow-up process and talking with these people and having genuine conversations. And that was something that my business partner and we struggled with when we first started. We were both engineers. So we were very focused on the hard product, the house, the property that we were walking. And we would go and we would be like, oh, so, walls, roof, kitchen needs to be redone, whatever. We can do all that. This is the price we can do for this property. And our conversion rate was terrible, right? And as we started to work with these people, we started to realize they're reaching out to us, obviously, because they have a distress. The house doesn't really matter. Are we providing them a service? Are we able to help them with whatever their situation is? And sure, you get some of these sellers, especially with institutional sellers, that they just want a number. But at the same time, they chose to call you off of this letter as opposed to listing with a broker for a reason. So you need to spend the time to build that trust and talk with them. And, sometimes that whole process can take 3 to 4 months. So making sure that you're willing and committed to going through that process and look beyond the property is going to be the key to not just throwing a bunch of marketing dollars down the drain.
Well, I wanted to ask you, how often are you mailing these people? I mean, a big portion of them are not contacting you, right? Do you keep marketing to those people? How often? How long? Those things.
So once someone's on our list, they are going to be mailed every single month until they call us and tell us to leave them alone. We have gotten deals that we have mailed people 16, 17 times before they finally call us. And the crazy thing is half the time with those people, we go to their house, they've kept all of our mailers. And they're like, you've sent us enough. You're obviously interested. We should have a conversation. And that's been our competitive advantage too, is we don't filter through our list. And so, we're not in a majorly giant market, so it's easy for us to sort of do the whole area. But I have friends that operate similar businesses in large markets like, Dallas, places like that. But what they do is they key into zip codes they like, and you just basically farm that. And then as you're looking to scale, you add another zip code, right? And you farm that. And once you have the process automated enough, pulling the data is always the same. Setting up the marketing is always the same. It's very easy to systematize that and outsource that. So it becomes kind of an automated process similar to, doing a renovation. That you're going to have to do a kitchen, where you're going to get cabinets from, you're going to do all that sort of stuff. You can build out a work schedule. You can build out a budget. Marketing is exactly the same. It's just not quite as tangible. So I think people struggle with it a little bit more. But yeah, our lists get bigger every month as more people are added, but no one gets removed unless they call us and explicitly say, leave me alone.
That's a lot of expense.
It is.
As well.
Yeah, we spend about $20,000 a month just on mail right now.
That's helpful, I think, for the listeners to hear as well. That may not be required in the very beginning.
Yeah, absolutely not. So, we started our business with $5,000 a month. With our business, business and I mean, the amount of margin that we have on our deals. So when we first started our business, it took us 4 months to get our first contract. We were $5,000 a month every single time. So we were $20,000 in the hole before we got our first contract. But then in that fourth month, because the follow-up time for most people is 60, 90 days, we got 4 deals in that fourth month, right? And all of a sudden we're in the green. I think in that fourth month so we assigned all those properties, we wholesaled all of them. I think we grossed $50,000. So we were $30,000 in profit at that point. And that's kind of how the business works is you can figure out your cost per deal. And that if you spend, for ours is $3,200, for every $3,200 in marketing we spend, I know I'm going to get a deal back. So I know if I spend $20,000 in marketing, there should be 6-ish deals in there. We should come out of the positive because our average deal size is about $23,000. And that's just on ones that we assign. The ones that we flip, the rental properties that we buy, those have even larger spreads, right? So it ends up being net very, very positive if you have the follow-up processes and you're willing to commit to that discomfort of seeing that money go out and not knowing when it's going to come back.
Are you about to start a podcast or producing a podcast and tired of doing the editing yourself? We have produced over 1,000 daily shows, and the production team that I've created, they're now available to produce shows for you as well. We can do as little or as much as you need, from finding and communicating with guests, preparing introductions, to editing the audio and video. You will sound better, have a more professional presence, and be able to spend your time doing other valuable tasks on your business. Let me know you're interested by emailing me directly at whitney@lifebridgecapital.com.
Got to be willing to take a little risk.
Exactly.
Right? You do. No doubt about it. And it may not always be financial, but some way you're going to have some type of investment, right? And so I want to ask you also, you mentioned having a follow-up system. Is that just more mailers, or do you mean after somebody contacts you? What does that look like?
Kind of both, right? So you have to, it's a dance. You kind of got to feel the leads out and know if they're going to respond better to direct outreach via phone call, text, and things like that, or if they're going to need to be put on the back burner and then be mailed again in the future to know that you're still interested. And generally you can tell that based off of how your conversation goes. Like, basic social skills, you can kind of like read the room, right, with the seller. And generally you'll know if you call them again next week, are they going to be pissed off at you? Or are they going to be, open to having a conversation? We have a follow-up process for when leads first come in. Our staff, they know to pursue it a certain number of times each week. They have their structure for how quick to book an appointment, how to make the offer, how to follow up on our offers to, try and get it signed, things like that. And then also too, we have a follow-up sequence just depending on how friendly they were, whether that's, weekly, monthly, via text or via call and voicemail, whatever, or putting them back in the mail pipeline. Generally, it's better to err on the side of like slightly more aggressive than you think. Like, if you think, man, that would drive me crazy if somebody called me like that, that's honestly probably what you got to do. Sometimes that burns the bridge with these sellers, but more often than not, that sets you up for more opportunity, because I can't tell you how many times we've had somebody that we've called 17, 18 times over a couple weeks after the initial conversation, and they never return our call. And then the 18th time they answer it and they're like, hey, how's it going? And it's like, we're best friends. They just completely ignore the fact that they've been ignoring us for 3 weeks.
What does the mailer look like?
Yeah, so we do a handful of different ones. So a lot of people that do direct mail marketing, I think where they waste their time is they're sending these cheapo mailers that's like a yellow notice of like you're going into foreclosure. I mean, I get those all the time in my rental properties and I never even look twice at them, right? We send more of what looks like a realtor postcard. It has our business. It has my business partner nice face. It has information about us. And it's like, hey, we are local guys that buy in this market. And even the stuff that we do virtually, we still do the same. We don't say that we're local, but we say that we're a small company looking to buy properties in this market, right?
So just a more professional
exactly
presence. I mean, you make yourself look like a professional business versus just some kid trying to, find a property for nothing, right?
Exactly. And, that leads them to a professionally designed website. There's tons of information about us on there. We have a local address wherever we market that they can sort of see that we're legit. We have Google reviews. We have all that sort of stuff, which builds that credibility, which is what makes us effective. So we do those for kind of like our general marketing, which is the very large list. And then for people that we can see that have multiple signs of distress, and this goes for commercial and for residential stuff, because you've actually gotten a lot of leads on like RV parks and industrial land, things like that from these kind of letters. We do these ones that they come in an envelope and they're written actually by a robot with a ballpoint pen. So it looks like a human wrote it. And it says like, hey, Mr. Seller, our names are Mike and Dan's, my business part's name. We're interested in buying this property at 123 Main Street. Then it has like a little quip, has a phone number to call us, has business website on it, and it says, give us a call. As far as the seller's concerned, happened, it looks like we handwrote them a letter, especially for them, right? To, give us a call. And those do very, very well, especially with I want to say like the more professional type people who get a lot of general marketing.
Does the robot make some mistakes on purpose?
It does the smudges. It does all sorts of stuff. It's actually pretty remarkable. And the company that we work with now, they even let you do like cursive or manuscript or, different sort of writing styles, things like that. It's pretty cool.
Can I ask the company?
Yeah. So we work with Ballpoint Marketing a lot. The coach that we worked with to start our business used them. Yeah, they've been great for us. And if anybody wants to use them, I do have a coupon code if people want that.
Okay. No, that's good to know. That's good to know. Well, that's just interesting. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of people listening thinking, well, I'm not going to handwrite all those.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But you do want it to feel as personalized as possible. It's interesting that they make mistakes. I've received things like that, and it looks like it's handwritten, but it's too perfect, right? You can tell that it's been printed, that way.
And that's the difference is they have the printed ones, but these ones are actually written by a pen. So just by nature of the situation, they're going to look, like there's there's like the pressure points, right? You can see the indentation where the pen was, and it works out pretty well.
That's so impressive. I didn't even know that existed. So that's cool. You mentioned that when they call, they're wanting to have that discussion. They're wanting to have that conversation. And so they're a pretty warm lead, right, at that point. And is that from that mailer or maybe from them? I mean, it's because of their situation, probably a lot, right? But what do you do to help nurture that, to make it so when they call, hey, it's a very warm lead. We're probably going to do something with this lead.
A lot of it's situational, but we do get more deals than you'd think from people that are, just looking for an easy transaction, especially for, landlords that don't want to disturb tenants, that, trying to 1031 exchanges, things like that. We've done a lot of deals with those sort of situations. So what that looks like is when somebody calls in, they go to a live person. We have a call center that we work with. The live person's professional. They ask questions. They give us a professional sort of feel directly from the start. So I know what a lot of new businesses will do. They'll have someone go to voicemail, things like that. That's probably one of the worst things you can do because, half the time if somebody goes to voicemail, especially if they're nervous about giving you a call, they're not going to leave a voicemail. And you call them back, they're not going to answer you. All right, so they go to a live person, and then our call center that we work with, they either book an appointment for our salespeople on the phone. If the people are a little bit apprehensive, then our salesperson will try to call them back within 30 minutes, basically just to introduce themselves and say, hey, I'm the local rep that you're going to be working with, and I get some more information about your property, what's going on, and comes in with like the soft touch, right, to sort of feel out the situation and then try to book the appointment himself.
Impressive. This call center, is this, do you train these people? How does that work?
So we use a service that it's called Call Porter.
Call Porter?
Yep, Call Porter, and they're a call center specifically designed for real estate investors.
Nice. Well, I know that's a question that I want to just make sure and make a note because that's something people are going to want to know, right?
Yep, and you can give them your own scripts. You can tell them what questions you want them to ask, and they're all professional people. And it's great because they work around the clock, pretty much. Well, it's not quite around the clock, but a lot of hours. I want to say it's like 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday. So if your team's not working yet, if they're out running appointments, if you have a full-time job and you're not able to answer calls all the time, it's a great option for you to be able to have a live person to answer the phone.
Is there any way that you incentivize employees, to be making these calls or to close deals or anything like that?
Yeah, so all my team works on commission, so they're strongly incentivized to close deals. And also, too, what we do as a business, regardless of whether you were involved in the deal or not, everyone gets a commission for every deal that's closed. So that's the big thing that we push is it's a team business. So if like one of our sales guys isn't involved in a transaction because the other one got there first, it doesn't matter. He's still getting paid. So there's no animosity there. There's no sort of us versus them, and it makes it more like a sports team where you're all just trying to win at the end of the day.
Love that. No, that's so cool. Any other tips around the marketing system that maybe we haven't talked about before we move on to a few final questions?
Yeah. So with the marketing system, the big thing is consistency is more important than perfection. That's one of the most challenging pieces.
I am living proof of that. Okay. And the listeners know that.
And most people are, honestly, because tell you what, when you flush your first, you flush, quote unquote, your first $5,000 on a total on marketing, it doesn't feel good when, you're like, man, I didn't make any money from that. I'm not supposed to do it again. But you just kind of have to trust the process that it's going to come back. And you have to measure more like your lead KPIs, right? Instead of your lag KPIs. So instead of measuring your contracts, you're like, well, how many leads did I actually get? How many appointments am I going on? How many offers am I making, right? And that will measure the success of your marketing versus the actual contracts, because you can guarantee that the more leads you get, the more appointments you go on, the more appointments being virtual too. We do a lot of our stuff over the phone. The more offers you make, the more opportunities you're going to have for a contract. But a lot of people look at, especially traditional business people, look at dollars out, dollars in. That's realistically not a good metric of whether your marketing is working or not, especially in this business where, with real estate, it's kind of different from like if you're selling widgets. If you're selling widgets, you're kind of hunting rabbits. You're making 30, 40, $100 on whatever. You know that if you spend this ad spend X on, people will buy. This, you're hunting like dragons. You're going to have to spend time to take this thing down, but you know that if you can do that, right, there's a huge opportunity there. But it's a much harder beast to kill at the end of the day, right?
Are you making offers right there on the phone?
Not typically. We will very, very occasionally. It depends on the situation with the seller and what we feel their wants are from the initial conversation. I know some people will do that and then basically verify condition after the fact. We have found that we have more success building a little bit of a relationship. I think especially because our market is a higher price point. There are a lot of people that are legacy owners of the property. They've owned it for like long periods of time. That just sort of is a common thing where we live. So if you go in and you're like, we originally started with making these offers really quick or on the spot once we got to the appointment, things like that, people were pretty tentative. I think if you're in a much more investor heavy market or someone with a much larger population, that could probably work a little bit better. I met one of the guys here at GoBundance. His whole process, he has a similar business to mine. Their whole process is call comes in, goes to the salesperson, they ask questions, they make an offer, right? And that's pretty much the complete opposite of ours. So ours, call comes in, we kind of get to know them a little bit, we ask them questions, we go out, we meet them, sit down, have a cup of coffee, we review the photos, we make an offer. Obviously, it varies lead type, like based on the individual that we're talking to, but in general, that's kind of the approach that we take.
How has, say, COVID, and the pandemic changed how you are buying projects?
As you can imagine, at first when it started, it was very challenging because we weren't able to run appointments, things like that. As we've gone, it hasn't had a huge effect on our business. Honestly, one of the bigger dilemmas that we've had over the past couple of years is just the fact that our market that we're in has appreciated so incredibly much. So Eastern Washington and Northern Idaho were two of the highest appreciating markets in the past couple of years. So what's happened is there's a lot of people that have these very distressed properties that want to stay in the area, but if they sell that property, they literally can't afford to go anywhere. So that's been a big challenge that we've been trying to deal with. And there's even situations where people are living in houses that are so unsafe to live in. And we're like, you'll be walking with $150,000 on this deal. But they're like, but what am I going to do with that? They can't move into an apartment because there's nothing available there. Everyone's moving to where we're at, right? Or they can't buy a new house because they're not too expensive and they don't have income, a W-2 that supports that mortgage payment, right? So that's been a really big challenge that we've been dealing with. So like what we'll do sometimes with people is we'll like allow them to rent back from us, or we will, even put them into properties that we already own if they're tenant-worthy individual. But in terms of COVID, it's made it more difficult to get appointments. We're on the eastern side of Washington, so a lot of the mandates and stuff we haven't had like City of Seattle's had. So I think over there it's probably been a lot more challenging, but we're more of a conservative area. So generally COVID itself hasn't been a huge factor for us.
What's the biggest thing that's holding you back from scaling right now?
And that is a key question. That's something I've been chatting with a lot of people around here. So I think part of it is right now our team's a little bit small. So, as we increase our marketing, they sort of get inundated with opportunities and they get like squirrel syndrome, right? Like they're just squirrel over here, squirrel over there, like a dog, right? They don't spend the appropriate amount of time on the stuff that comes in. That's one thing that we're working on, but also too, just with the size of our market, if we're marketing purely to motivated people, we've kind of tapped it out. So we're kind of hitting everyone at this point. So it's like, well, do we increase our marketing to reach out to potentially less motivated people and basically spend 2 times as much marketing to get 10% more deals? Or do we go and we start doing it in more remote markets, which you've already started to do a little bit, but it just comes with its own challenges, which will also need a team expansion. So it's sort of figuring out those numbers and that data, and the process is there to do that remote style of our business. So
what are some daily habits that you have that you're disciplined about that have helped you achieve this level of success?
Yeah. So like for me personally or for my business?
How about one of both?
One of both. Yeah. So for me personally, I'm a big physical fitness guy. Something that's very important to me is every single day I wake up and I hit the gym. I have a home gym. I have an online coach that does my programming for me. And for me, that's super important because it's kind of my meditative time as well. So, I don't do super crazy workouts or anything. I just do basic strength training and, some aerobic stuff. I like to, ride bikes, play sports, things like that. That's super important for me to be successful every morning. I usually wake up about 6, do that from about 6:30 to 7:30. From our business standpoint, we're a remote business. We're our virtual business. We do a very religious mandatory stand-up meeting in the morning that everyone has to be on. And I make a point of making sure that business is not purely about work, right? And, I think a lot of business owners, they try to make everything productive. I make sure that in that meeting that we have, which is an hour every morning, probably 30 minutes of that is just banter. It's just the team having fun, chatting, checking in. That's really helped the culture of a virtual business, which I know is something that a lot of business owners right now are struggling with how can I have a culture without an office? It's I'd say we have one of the best business cultures you can have. That meeting's mandatory. Everyone comes to it, and sort of the expectation is come to have fun for 30 minutes, and then we will talk business, and then everyone will go and do their tasks for the day.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm hearing more and more about this daily check-in meeting, right? But I hear some people that limit it to 15 minutes. They're going to do it a high, low from everyone around the room. Maybe they recite their core values or something, and then they're cutting it off very quickly. I think it's interesting how you allow the time, which I also agree is important, just to have a little fun, right? And get to know each other a little bit more outside of just business, and people feel more like they belong to, right? With those relationships. So how's the rest of that meeting structured? What are you looking for? Is there a specific structure? Do other team members bring in, they know what you're going to be covering? What does that look like so it is productive for the rest of that meeting?
Exactly. So usually the first 30 minutes is kind of just banter. The second 30 minutes is going through active negotiations. I talk with my sales guys of what leads are you working? What can I support with? Why are things not moving forward with these leads? And we basically just go through our CRM and we go line by line, and we sort of make a plan to pursue those leads further or move them forward along. Then our stuff that's currently an active transaction, we kind of do the same thing with our transaction coordinator. Is everything on track? Is there anything that we need to plan for coming up? Are there any challenges that you expect? And it's very simple. We just go that way. And then, we basically end the meeting. Is there anything that I can help any of you with? Outside of the active leads right now. And if, sometimes people have random things, of something they're struggling with tech-wise, something that they're unhappy about, things like that.
No, that's great. It's important to have that connection time as well. So how do you like to give back?
Yeah, so one of the ways that we're looking to give back here with our business, mainly for newer investors especially. So the business that we have is it's a very repeatable business. You can go and you can do this in any market. We prove that you can do it in multiple markets and it works well. So we have a real estate podcast that we started. It's called the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. And it's a slightly different from a lot of other real estate podcasts that focus on big wins that people have or these really impressive individuals. We're basically talking about the true nature of running our business, the ups and the downs and the strategies for it. So it's 30 minutes, one time a week, pretty simple. So we do that. And then we've started working with people one-on-one to, sort of help get their business started. So if anybody's interested in that, they can reach out to me via my Instagram, which I'll say here in a sec. But, one thing I will say with that is if you are interested in doing this business, make sure you're at least willing to spend $5,000 a month on marketing or else you're going to be wasting your time most likely. So that's what we've been doing. We haven't been charging for it much yet. It's been more just proof of concept for us of how many people can we get on the same path of what we're doing right now.
Very cool. And I did think of one follow-up question. Yeah. I meant to ask a minute ago, but we're so low on time. Are you seeing people do the same thing or use your process in, say, other asset classes, outside of, say, just single-family residences or small multifamily, those things, but maybe somebody's going to buy small storage facilities or maybe they're going to buy land or something else. Would it work the same?
It should, yep. So, I have friends all over the country that from my own mastermind that I joined to start this business. So I joined a mastermind that was basically laid the framework for kind of what we're doing, and then you sort of mix and match and find what works for you and how you want to run your business, right? So we've adapted it pretty heavily, but I know people all over the country that are doing the same marketing processes, same types of marketing, things like that are finding self-storage, commercial units, retail units, developable land. You kind of name it. People are finding it everywhere.
That's what I expected, but I just wanted you to blow that myth out of the water because I'm sure there's people that are wondering about that, right?
Mobile home parks, I know that's a big one. We actually were under contract for a mobile home park that called from one of our mailers, and the only reason we didn't close it was because the seller didn't disclose a bunch of things to us before we, as we were doing our due diligence on it. So, whatever you're hunting, it'll work.
It's that personalized touch, isn't it? And the mass volume, right? Mike, a pleasure to meet you. Honored to have you on the show, hear your story, and really just your transparency around how you do this, right? I mean, you've spent a lot of time figuring this out, right? And building these systems that, just the marketing to connect with these sellers so you're successful. And now you seem to have it figured out. Now you're helping others. I'm grateful to have met you, and tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So easiest way to get in touch with me directly is on Instagram. I'm at Mike_invests. You can shoot me a DM on there. I'll post stuff about the deals we do. I'm not the best at posting on there, so I'm not the most exciting follow, but it is a very easy way to shoot me a message, or you can shoot me an email at Mike@collectingkeyspodcast.com. That's another way to get in touch with me directly. If you are interested in sort of setting the framework for this business, but you don't want to talk to me, on our podcast website, collectingkeyspodcast.com, we have a little giveaway that's basically the 5-step process to start generating off-market leads. It's a really simple rundown of exactly how we started running our business, and somebody can go and download that and you can get started. And I can say pretty confidently that if you go through those steps, you will be getting leads in like a 10-day span. If you really just go through and just commit to going through that, it's not that complicated at the end of the day. It's really not rocket science.
Mike, honored to have you. I hope you have a blessed day.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the #1 resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.